Welcome back to the Keep Going podcast with Vin Kennedy. I'm your host, Vin Kennedy. We have a very special guest. This is a repeat offender. This is Dan. Dan, you want to, at this point you've already done a brief intro, but where do you want to start here?
Yeah, let's just start with what we're here to talk about.
All right.
And that is the Grand Canyon adventure that we just had. Now going on a month, dude.
Yeah. Literally.
Crazy.
So I guess for me, it didn't really mean as much as it did for you, of course. So if you kind of want to tap into like what the canyon meant to you and like why.
Yeah. So last year, a documentary came out by a filmmaker / ultra runner named Billy Yang. And it was like him and this big crew, they went and did the rim to rim to rim, which is the Grand Canyon has two rims, the south rim and the north rim. On the south side, there's two starting points. So you could start at either point, but you'll still end up on that side. And then you run out to the north rim and back. And when I watched Billy Yang's documentary about it, it just like, I literally watched it like 5 times because it gave me this like crazy feeling of like how beautiful the Grand Canyon was. And I was like, I want to do that one day. Like would be insane. Like I kept watching it almost as if like I was manifesting it to come true. But in the back of my head, I was like, when am I going to get out to to Arizona and do this? That's another thing. I used to think the Grand Canyon was in Nevada.
Really?
Yeah, when I was a kid. Maybe until recently I didn't realize it was in Arizona. But now I definitely know. So in doing that, the seed was planted. I was definitely wanting to do the rim to rim one day, and then we met, and after meeting you and seeing how much you commit, you say something and you commit.
Impulsive, yeah.
Yeah,
a little bit
sometimes your impulsiveness is helpful and sometimes it has to be tamed.
Yeah.
But for this instance, like I was like, I want to run the rim to rim one day. I was like, would you do it with me?
Yeah.
And you were like, yeah.
Yeah, I
I'm
didn't
down.
know what it was.
And in fact, let's do it right now. Let's book it. And this was in February. We planned to do it in May when it opened.
This is when we got back from the marathon.
Arizona, yeah. We were out in Arizona for your marathon.
Yeah.
Got back, said we were going to do it. We did it, just like how we did the first marathon, right?
Yeah.
Like when you were like, I'm doing it. And I was like, I'm going to do the half.
Yeah.
So we did that again. And recently we've done that again, planning something and committing. And so that just made it real, right? Like you saying you want to do it. Mm-hmm. I was like, I'm actually going to fucking do this.
Yeah.
We're going to go run the Grand Canyon.
Yeah.
And then we got hit with a curveball about like 2 weeks out.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, if you kind of want to go into, so it's funny, like even you explaining rim to rim to rim, like I just threw myself into this as like, I've never even hiked. Like I was just like, I'll do this thing and this seems sick and I know nothing about the logistics, and that's where, you came in. So if you want to go over like what our route actually was compared to what the normal traditional route is.
Yeah. Just even going off what you said, you not even doing that. There's this like energy from you where I just know when you commit to something, and I know you have like a running background and you're definitely capable of running 50 miles. Even though it was in the mountains, like I just knew you were capable of doing this, and I trusted having you by my side to do this.
No doubts.
So that was there's some, maybe like, oh, what if we die? Like, what if something happens out there? What if you died and then it's all me? Kind of opposite happened. What was the question? How did we get involved? So 2 weeks before, one of my friends who's an ultra runner race director, I reached out to her because I saw she had a YouTube video that she did it solo last year or 2 years ago, and I DM'd her just asking like, how was it? I know so much, but like, could you give me any more details if you have any, or what was your experience like? And she goes, oh, and she tells me her whole experience, and she's like, the North Rim is closed until June. And we already booked everything out.
Snowfall, right?
That was because excessive snowfall, which hasn't happened in years, they say. Right. So it damaged the North Rim Trail. So there was a point where you get to a campground and then like the rest of it was shut down under construction. So I'm like, damn it, we can't even hit the rim to rim, which would be 47, 48 miles. So we had to reroute, and on Strava you can go into maps and you can create your own route, and that's exactly what I did. I actually reached out to, his name's Bronco Billy, but Jeff Browning, a really good ultra runner who's won plenty of things, including the Hard Rock 100. I asked him because he's out there, he trains in the canyon. I was like, how's this route? And like a week later he got back to me and he was like, that route is gnarly. Like it's replicating the rim to rim to rim. So that also gave me clarity of like, okay, we're going to do basically the same thing.
Right.
So then the Strava thing created the route. It was the same 47 miles and the same elevation, which was like 11,000 total.
And then like, what were your thoughts going in? And then I guess like the piggyback question would be like, what should people that are going to do the rim to rim to rim kind of like think about and expect?
So my thoughts going into running the Grand Canyon were all over the place. It was, do I know the route? Do I have all the gear ready? All of like the logistics and that. But then there was like some questions in my head, like what if this happens? What if that happens? You know, the fears, a rattlesnake, heat, whatever it is, dehydration.
Vin doesn't run trails.
Yeah, like you don't run the mountains that much. What happens when we're out there?
Yeah.
In the middle of nowhere at some points. It was really the middle of nowhere. So there was all those questions, but also at the same time, I'm like, and we kept saying it to each other, like, we're going to run the fucking Grand Canyon.
Yeah.
And it's going to be an amazing experience. And that's what it's all about. And that's what like this year really has like blown into my face, is that like life is about moments and experience, and being in the moment during an experience is like the ultimate life experience. Like there's the hack, just be in the moment and do things to experience life that are outside of your comfort zone or outside of your realm or where your day-to-day thing is. And travel includes with that.
Yeah.
So it was just a bunch of excitement, a bunch of fear, anxiety, all of the emotions really, and that's what I feel before most of my ultras or big pushes.
And then for people that want to go into this, like what are some key things, and then obviously we'll get into like our experience, but like key things as far as like, because I just know how beneficial it was watching the videos that you sent me to like kind of anticipate like what you're going to come across. So like what are some things that pop into your head as far as like what you should know or what you should think about that you might not be?
Yeah, I mean, one is definitely going to the actual website of the Grand Canyon and reading everything. Read about the closures, read about how the heat has been, read about the whole trail, study the trail, know what you're going to be doing. What we did was a little different because we were taking a different route. It's all on the same route. You really can go out and back, but it wasn't the exact rim to rim, so I just wanted to make sure we were making the right turns if we had any, and knowing the campgrounds and where the water stations were at. So really important is knowing where the water stations are at, knowing if the water stations are on, and knowing that you're gonna have plenty of water on you the whole time. So that is probably the biggest thing. You'll see signs in the Grand Canyon that have people like vomiting in a cartoon and says like excessive dehydration, this could be you. And it's a very serious thing. And even though if it's not too hot in the canyon, it's still very hot no matter what. Like even if it says 85 degrees or 80 degrees, that is real dry heat. So even if you feel like you're used to it, you're not. And the other thing, you're constantly sweating. So hydration is super important. One thing I did poorly was think, I'm very experienced, I know the water stations, I know they're all on, and I don't want to carry too much. So that was my wronging of being like, I don't want to carry too much. Like carry as much as you need because your life matters more than anything, more than completing this task. So bringing that extra water, I made Vin, I gave you the list of everything, all the gear to get, and one of them was the 2-liter bladder. And the night before, I'm like, the bladder's going to be heavy in our bag, which it really fucking wouldn't have.
Yeah.
And so I was just like, screw the bladder. And Vin was like, you were like, why don't we just pack it just in case?
Just one.
Yeah, just pack one.
And one of us, and then we don't have to fill it until we need it.
And I was just so like, no, honestly, we don't need that.
I agreed though, and it was also, I think we were kind of focused on like, we didn't have like a strict time limit, but like, well, what if that does make us heavier and we move slower?
Right.
So I think it was a trade-off that ended up obviously not being the
It
best.
we brought up valid points, but I would just like disregard all that and say bring everything.
Yeah.
Like next time I do it, I'm bringing everything.
Yeah, I agree.
So hydration is your most important. Making sure you have plenty of water, and like even if you know every water station is on, bring extra or be prepared to have extra water with you.
Yeah.
Or stay at an aid station or stay at a campground and hydrate. Take your time. There's no rush. There's no races out there. So anyone that's doing this, they're on their own anyway. So there's no race. There's no rush. Don't let your excitement overtake you. And yeah.
I think that's key. And like even you were hitting on like experience as a whole, and it's so true because like I don't think we rushed it. I think we got a great experience out of it, and I think we learned a ton. But I think yes, there's no race, but I feel like we did have some sort of push that was like making us like do things quicker than we maybe should have, where it's like, yeah, like if you have to sit at Phantom Ranch for an hour, who cares?
Yeah.
Like it might get dark. Like it is what it is. Yeah, it's true.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
like looking back at it now, I was just too excited. I was just like, I want to go. I want to like see more, and I want to like get this done with a sick time. And that's just like all against my training too. Like when I'm in training and just running, I'm like, when I'm running with other people, I'm like, chill, man. Like
Right.
pull over, take a piss. Like don't stop your watch, relax. Like it's all good.
Yeah. Not
Let's hydrate, let's fuel. But when I was in that canyon, it was just so much energy, and I was like ready to go.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm here, we're doing it, let's keep moving. And I'm also used to that in an ultra marathon where I know there's aid stations. I know it's almost like there's comfort on the way.
True.
Where this was a little different for me.
Yeah. And if you wanted to go into like the journey, I mean, what time did we get there? Like 5:30
a.m. Yeah, it was.
We started like 5:30, right?
I think we started at 5:30.
Yeah.
It was nice.
So personally, I'm just going to start from my end, and then if you want to go into yours, I got a text from my cousin that lives in the city. We don't really talk as much as I'd like to, and it was of his friend ran a half marathon at like a 1:20, and I was like, wow, that's sick. And he's like, yeah, how many miles are you running today? And I haven't talked to him in probably months. And I was like, this is so funny. And I sent him a picture of the Grand Canyon. He's like, wait, what? I was like, yeah, no, I'm running the Grand Canyon today. He's like, you're running the Grand Canyon. I was like, yeah, I didn't even know you could do this either. It's gonna be 47 miles. So that's how my day started. So that was like so cool.
Was it you that told me that you didn't even know you can go into the canyon?
Yeah. So I went to the canyon when I was like 14 with my family, and we were actually just talking about it in Aruba. We probably stood out there for, I'm not even exaggerating, 7 minutes. Like looked at the canyon and we were all like, yeah, this is cool, you good to go? And we left. And like, it also goes back to like me growing up, like I wasn't present enough. And I just think it's like something you learn as you grow, like how precious time is. But yeah, I think that's the funniest thing. And then even the more we've talked about it, like I truly didn't even know you could go in there. Like it just seemed like, you know, it's probably pretty dangerous. Like I don't know if that's a good idea, and I didn't even think about it. And then obviously I met you, and I knew that was different. But if you want to go into like the start of your morning, like and like your thoughts like prior to like actually diving in.
Yeah. Yeah, like pure excitement.
Yeah.
I mean, when we woke up in the morning, the music was blasting. We were
Absolutely.
like, wow, like we were going crazy just
our
at the
beds.
Airbnb. What was that?
We made our beds.
Made sure to do that.
Yeah.
And you know, the drive there, we were like jittery, we were ready.
Yeah.
I was just ready to go, man. I was so excited. And we rolled up, and you got that first view for the first time in my lifetime, besides like TV or all the pictures I've seen of the canyon. It really does take your breath away. Like when I was really breathless for a second, like, wow.
Yeah.
This is it. And it's, whoa.
Yeah,
it's
like,
crazy. Everyone, like you have to go there to experience that feeling, but it's unbelievable.
Yeah.
And then to just like go into the trailhead and go into the trail and start running down it with the way the sun was, it was still shaded, and like every 15 minutes the sun would change the colors of the rocks as we got deeper in. But yeah, I mean, just going into it, it was just, I'm here, let's do this.
Yeah. Yeah, we kept saying like this is living, like it is, because like this is experience, like this is what the buildup is. Like you don't live life to get to these moments, you should live intentionally anyway, but like when you're in these, you need to be super intentional to like actually experience the experience. For me personally too, like when we first started and we're just rolling downhill, I'm like, this is great. Like, this is awesome. It's downhill. There's a lot of rock, which I struggle on because I'm not used to it. We learned that in your ultra. And I was like, oh, I could like keep pace here. I mean, we were clipping in the beginning, like 8-minute miles or something in the 8s.
We were going fast.
And then, yeah, we kind of hit that point where we were just going through some rough terrain. I hit I don't even know what I did, rolled my ankle slightly, probably like 2 miles in, 3 miles in. And I was like, shit. And then that's when you kind of slid to the front and started leading. And I was just like, I forget. I was quickly reminded like everybody's different and better at different things in running. And I was very quickly humbled and reminded of your specialty, which is just sprinting downhill on rocks. And I was like, this kid is like the fastest fucking kid alive. And like, I didn't want to slow you down, but at the same time, I didn't want to like put too much pressure on my ankle because it was like starting to like loosen up on me. So I was like, shit. And I started to have like those like, not doubts, but like, I don't want to hinder his experience because I don't want to say I was along for the ride, but like this was your thing. And like, you kind of like brought me along on it. And it was like a real concern of mine, but was able to like kind of loosen it up. We found some flat ground that we were able to get to after we descended, and it really loosened up and we were good. But I'm curious to like, what were your thoughts when I was like, yeah, I just rolled my ankle?
Yeah, so like at first, I remember it, like now that we're talking about like, especially running down.
Yeah, we were flying.
It's so clear in my mind right now. Yeah, we were flying. And I remember you like, oh shit, I rolled my ankle. And like in my head, I was like, oh, he's good. He just rolled it. And like, cause like when I roll my ankle, like I'm like, I'm
doesn't
good.
Matter, yeah.
I'm like, that's what happened this time. And then I think I asked you like, are you good? Like, is
Yeah.
it hurt? And you're like, yeah, but I'll get it. And then I kind of saw that like you were struggling
yeah.
and so I was like, fuck.
Yeah.
Like I hope this doesn't.
Yeah.
And it wasn't because of it, like, oh, this is ruining my experience. It was like, I hope that you're not in pain and then we have to like get back up. Like it would have been like a lot. And then you could have been hurt afterwards. Like those are like the thoughts in my head. Like,
Yeah.
Is it bad? Is it good? And then when we got towards the bottom for our first water station and you're like, it's loosening up depending on the terrain we were on.
Yeah.
I knew we were like in the clear that you'd push through. But yeah, it was definitely concerning, you know?
Yeah.
And it was like, of course, like first mile.
I know, it was like 2 miles in. I was like, shit. It said 2 miles on my watch. I looked at my watch. I think you might have been in front of me or like right next to me. And like I looked, didn't look where I was stepping and just hit something and twisted. I was like, shit. And then if you want to get into like the first aid station, I think we met those two dudes.
Oh yeah. Yeah, we met, these guys were from the West and their wives were from like New York.
Yes.
And that's something we figured out. And these guys were like, they were out there
so laid back and like just
so chill. And and then when we told them what they were doing, they were like, "What?"
Yeah, literally.
Wait, you're doing this whole thing? Like they thought we were just out there hiking, probably like camped out, and like we were telling them like, "Yeah, we're running this whole thing in the next couple hours."
Yeah.
And they're like, "Yeah, like."
Well, and then from there so you descend. How much do you think we lost on that?
You run down like 5,000 feet.
Yeah, and then it's a flat for approximately how many miles?
It's like flatten down. You still kind of go down. That's probably the whole 5,000 feet. And then when you get to like the actual bottom of the canyon after the bridge, then it's like, I don't know, from like Phantom Ranch to Cottonwood. How many miles is that? 6?
I think it was 6 or 7. I think we bypassed Phantom the first time through, as far as like we just kind of went through, we didn't stop.
Yeah, I think we did. We just stopped for a few minutes. We got water. We filled up.
And I think we actually asked the lady when they're open. And
oh yeah, they weren't even opening yet.
Yeah.
So we were like, by the time we get back, we'll have lemonade. She's like, yeah, you're good.
And if you want to go into that, because you had a couple questions for her, and then even just for anybody that's going to do this or wants to know about it, what Phantom Ranch even like entails and what it is.
Yeah. So Phantom Ranch it's like one of the most popular campgrounds in the Grand Canyon, and they're known for this lemonade, which is probably like simply lemonade. Like it's
honestly, it probably was, but it didn't taste like it at the time.
It's because like the only way to get to the Phantom Ranch and to the bottom of the canyon is by hiking, or you could take the mules. There's mules that go down, and there's all these rules with when the mules come up and go down and how you should be if you're on the trail. And so that's one thing. The people that are down there had to have hiked, had to have experienced going down, and then they have to go up. So that's really cool and interesting of the canyon. Like the only way to experience that is by traveling down. And when you're in there, there's like little huts, and then there's the actual ranch, which you can get food, drink, refill, and there's also water pumping out of the ground that you can refill. And it was in that original documentary of him talking about that lemonade, so it was like a cool experience to be in the same spot that Billy Yang was drinking that. And all these really, really well-known ultramarathoners have stood there drinking lemonade in that spot. And the thing I asked the lady, I was like, what happens? Like, you work here, you stay here overnight, how many days? And I believe she said she works 7 days on, 3 days off. And she'll hike up and hike down. And bring in all your stuff too.
So crazy.
Or you could take the mule. Yeah, it's crazy. It's really cool though. Like, they're not gonna helicopter drop you. Like, you gotta hike down 10 miles to get there.
So then from there we left and went to
Cottonwood,
and that's
the last campground that we could have went before we would have fell into the construction.
Right, for the north, or the closed off area, right?
Yeah.
So if you kind of want to go through your thoughts. We hit the Colorado River before that though, right?
Yeah.
So that view was insane.
Yeah. Like when we popped out, I think it's called Pebble Beach or some kind of beach. You pop out and you see the Colorado River, and we saw that for the first time.
Yeah.
I don't even know. I can't even describe the words, but it's like, wow, that's the fucking Colorado River. Like, you learned about that your whole life. There it is right in front of you.
Yeah.
And it's really big and crazy and wild. And then we roll up and we get to that bridge, and you run over this bridge, and when you look down, it has holes in the it's a metal bridge, and you can see the water under you.
Yeah.
So I'm like, Vin, look down.
Yeah, that's where Mike filmed Musa.
Yeah.
That's what we kept saying.
That's
it
what
looks just like the album cover. Like, it's insane.
But he's in Montana.
Yeah, exactly. So then getting there.
You get there, and then after the Colorado River, you end up at Phantom Ranch. You pass the Mules station, and you end up at Phantom Ranch. And then after there is where it gets very like open, and you're not going to see many people. Even like on the North Rim side, it's more green over there, less people, probably more wildlife, which we did see.
Yeah.
So we're heading out there, and knowing that we had to get to Cottonwood. At Cottonwood, there's water. That's what was in my mind. There's water out there. So we travel 6 miles, then we're going to turn back around. And it was like this.
Yeah, it was,
when we were
up
going.
and down. Yeah.
And then there was the bursted pipe.
Yeah.
So we passed this bursted pipe. No idea where this water's coming from.
Didn't think anything of it.
Didn't think much of it.
Yeah.
I put my hand in, it was ice cold, and I was like, yo, I'm going to like stay here for a minute, dump my head in it. And you were like, I'm just going to keep going.
Yeah.
Because your foot.
My ankle was still tight, so I was like,
yeah, you didn't want to stop.
You were quicker. I was like, let me just keep going. That way you catch me, and we'll just go together after that.
And then I stayed there, like, dunked my head. It was amazing, and then kept going, not knowing that water was going to be super important in a little bit.
And then we got wet, though, because we had to go through the little, what would
was
you
a creek.
consider that? A creek, yeah. There was a creek that you kind of, like, there were some rocks to step on, but you kind of couldn't avoid just getting your shoes
We just
soaked.
had to walk through.
So we got soaked through that, and that comes into play, too. And then from there, we were, maybe from there was like a mile until?
Mile or two.
Yeah.
Until we got to Cottonwood. The thing that freaked me out about going through the water was my first attempt at 100 miles when my feet got wet. It was a disaster with the blisters. But the Arizona dry heat dries you up so fast that, like, we were maybe a half mile and my feet weren't wet anymore.
It was refreshing more than like a detriment. Yeah.
Like, you're good. If anyone that does it, like, is afraid of getting their feet wet, like, you get your feet wet out there, you're good in 10, 15 minutes.
So then we get to Cottonwood, and what was what
Get to Cottonwood, we start looking around, and I'm like, where's the water? You walk up to one, no, it's not there. Walk up to the other thing, and it says they had like numbers, right? Like the huts had numbers, or the campgrounds had numbers, and it was like, there's no water.
Yeah.
Like, the thing was turned, and there's no water coming out. So I was like, bro, we didn't see a sign, like, there should be water here.
And that goes back to what you were saying earlier, where it's like you really need to make sure the aid stations, because like you could find yourself, luckily this wasn't it for us, but you could find yourself in a situation where like you're fucked. Like
that was scary. Yeah.
I think we
still had water on us.
Yeah, so we weren't as stressed, and we just passed, or there were guys coming up. Mm-hmm. So like just seeing people kind of helps too, and like we were kind of like, okay, this isn't like...
Remember those guys didn't give us any water?
No, they had a ton of water on them, didn't give us a drop. I went into because they had bathrooms, like actual bathrooms, and I was like, maybe they have a sink. No say. No. But yeah, so we weren't really freaking out. I think we also at that point have hydrated well enough. Like we were doing electrolytes often. We drank a ton of water, and then we didn't even really touch on it, but like fueling wise, like, I mean, this was just treats for me. I had a blast out there. I ate so many like protein bars, and I've never had like that ultra experience. Like obviously I paced you, but it was very like, you do 16, I tapped out, came back in, did like 18. So it was like basically long runs for me rather than like an ultra itself. But I was like, you're gonna give me an opportunity to do as many boba bars as I want and protein bars. I was like, I'm gonna take this opportunity. It's had that, the almonds with the salt on them were crucial.
The BPN bars, the field bars you were eating.
Yeah.
You were getting down everything.
Everything.
Well, the thing is with hydration is too, when you're out there, is like, you need to be ahead of hydration, because the second you're not ahead, you're going to start falling back, which I think at that point I was already falling back, because you were doing a great job of eating and drinking. I was drinking. After my first bar, in my head I'm like, I can't eat these things. Like, this sucks. And I had that bag of chips. I ate the chips. I just couldn't get like the processed food. And from my last 100, it was a lot of real foods like quesadillas and grilled cheese and things like that they were like solid. I was able to get them down and they were good. So that was already where I was backing up, right? Yeah. Wasn't getting enough food down. Got to that station. There wasn't water. I finished my water. What did we have to do next, Vin?
What, for
hydration?
So obviously we're out of water. There was that creek. You brought up that you had those, I think you told me earlier.
The iodine pills.
Iodine pills, which I've never even heard of.
Yeah, I
still
saw
don't
them on
know
Amazon.
what it is, and I'm still skeptical that we're like infected somehow. But basically, we went back to that creek, and from the creek, it was probably 2 more miles until where the busted pipe was.
Right.
Well, first we saw the guys, and they mentioned the busted pipe as well, and they were like, "Oh, maybe that's why the water isn't working," which could be. Who knows? So we go to the creek.
Kim actually DM'd me I posted me
really?
washing my head. She was like, "That's what you drink out of?"
Oh no, it was worse than that.
Before.
So really, the way I do all of this stuff like impulsively, and I'm just like, fuck it, like it is what it is. I was like, I can't get dehydrated out here, so like, I'm just gonna drink the creek. You're like, yeah, but what if we just go like 2 more miles and we have the bursted pipe? At least it seemed a little cleaner when I put my head under or whatnot. I was like, I'll get that one too. Like at this point, fuck it. So I filled up water bottles, dropped the iodine pill in it. You're like, yeah, it says wait like 30 minutes. And I think I shook it and just started chugging it.
Yep.
And then once that I did it, you did it.
I might have waited like 10 more minutes, which I think fucked me too.
Might have. And then, so like, I was like, no, I need water. Like I knew I needed water.
And you were dumping the LMNT into it too.
Yeah, so I just did electrolytes right off the bat. And then we got back to the busted pipe, both put our heads under it, which I've been seeing a lot too. Like obviously that's just like a second wind when you're dehydrated. Like just getting that cold water on your neck is like crucial. Mm-hmm. Your neck, hands, feet, like it plays a huge part. But yeah, then we filled up again, electrolytes again, because I was like, I can't get behind. And then what was your take on the creek and the busted pipe? It was definitely sketchy.
The creek was so sketchy because I was just thinking about parasites.
I tasted sand.
And puking and
who knows what's in there, literally.
Yeah, I just didn't know, and I just had a lot of like intrusive thoughts about what would happen after drinking it.
Yeah.
But we drank it and we lived.
Yeah.
To tell, but
nothing happened.
But in a scarce moment like that, like it's either you drink this or you get really dehydrated and might not make it out of here alive, dude.
Or you have to get helicoptered out, which is how much?
Probably not cheap at all.
No, I think they said like 20K or something crazy.
Jesus. Yeah, not cool.
Yeah, not good. So that was that, and then so obviously now we had water, now we're making our way back to Phantom Ranch. And
this is about like 20 miles in by now, or 18 miles in by the time we got back.
And like, I don't know, I know you had a low on our way to Cottonwood. I didn't really hit.
Actually, we were a marathon in by the time we got back.
Yes. But I remember you saying like when we saw the Colorado River initially, we kept going right before Cottonwood. You were like, yeah, it just came out of like a low. I'm like, really?
Yeah, I was like going through a little, like there's levels to lows, and I was definitely going through a little, like when you're in a high when we got in there, and then it just kicked in where it's the low is like I don't want to talk, I'm just focused on breathing, and like hopefully I ate one of those Bobo bars and I was like, hopefully this kicks in, gives me a little more energy.
I was gonna say it was probably the lack of food.
Yeah, that's exactly what it was.
But yeah, I mean that's the one, like I didn't have any lows, and like I don't know if I'm just internally messed up, and my self-talk is crazy. Like, I'm
That's
like,
good.
this is sick, and I was like, we're basically like done. I was like, we're not even halfway. But like in my head, I was like, we don't even have that much left. Like, and I'm like, I've never even did this. Like, what am I talking about?
You're notorious for that, though.
Yeah, it's crazy.
I'll call you on a Saturday morning and be like, I got 15 today. You're like, oh yeah, how many are you in? Like 4. Almost there, kid. You're almost there, kid.
I don't know. I just think it's a better way to look at it. But yeah, so then we make it back to Phantom Ranch. That, honestly, going back, nothing really. I mean, we drank that water, sketchy. But I think we started to feel a little better.
100%. I was so happy to be back there, knowing that like we have one more climb, go down, and then, or we have 2 more climbs, but the hardest climb was ahead of us. Once we get that done, we're in the clear. That was kind of where I was at mentally.
And we kept saying too that like, obviously we had to climb South Kebab. We had Phantom Ranch, climb up South Kebab, come back down. And then I was like, we have to just, this is again my internal talk, was like, we just have a flat to run a little bit, and then we're just got to go back to the car. Meanwhile, the climb back to the car,
5,000 feet to the car.
5,000 feet. But yeah, if you want to talk about Phantom Ranch, and like, I definitely want to mention the older gentleman. I think he was like 90, right?
He was like 90 or 91.
Yeah, but if you want to just go into Phantom Ranch.
Phantom Ranch was great to get back.
Yeah.
And we got like 2 lemonades. I think a lemonade is like $5 and then $1 to refill. So we both got 2 each. There's a water pump there, so we were pumping up water. I was eating like some handfuls of the almonds we had, and I changed my socks to put on. My feet were pretty like disgusting. Yeah. So were yours. I have pictures.
I couldn't change my one shoe because I didn't want to take it off with my ankle, but the other foot was disgusting. My feet still are. I need a pedicure for sure.
Yeah, we like cleaned up a little. Yeah. You definitely need to. You need to cut it off and get a new one.
But yeah, so the older gentleman.
Yeah, so this old guy comes to me. He's like looking at my feet. He's like, oh my gosh. He's like, he's a Spanish guy, like from Spain. He said he grew up in Germany, but he's like Spanish. And he's telling me about his socks. He's like, I don't know where my socks are from. And like he had a thick accent. And then after he was like, I'm going to figure out, my daughter's going to tell you what kind of socks they are. It turns out they were like REI socks, which are like, me and his daughter laughed because he couldn't figure that out because it's a popular store now. So he's telling me like, I was here, I think he said 50 years ago. And I was like, what? Like 50 years ago is the last time you're here? Not even doing the math of like, how old can this guy be? And then he's telling me stories about the Grand Canyon and where he was in his life, and it was really amazing. And then his daughter comes up and she's like, yeah, my dad's 91.
Crazy.
And then I'm thinking, I'm like, so he hiked 10 miles to get down here? He's going to hike 10 miles to go back up? That's crazy. And he was hiking that day. Yeah. So
just goes to show you, like,
Europeans live longer. That's just one thing. And like movement, right? Like it's movement, being out there and experiencing nature, experiencing life in nature definitely has something to do with longevity for sure.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So yeah, and then even at Phantom Ranch, so I'm like at this point in the day just inhaling Cliff bars and Bobo bars, and I was like, I don't want to run out. It's like I bought another one at Phantom Ranch, ate that.
I didn't even know that.
Yeah, and then so when we started to leave, they have all the mules, which was really cool. They had horses too.
Yeah, that was sick.
Yeah, that was sick. We'll probably throw up like videos of it as we talk about certain things, but that was so cool because like, I had no idea that was down there. And like just the fact that that's down there, like I think I was having a conversation with my mom, like, yeah, there's horses at the bottom of the Grand Canyon. And she's like, are you on drugs? Like, no, I was like, I was there, so don't tell me no, there's not. But yeah, like I was like, weird, right? And she's like, that is kind of cool.
And they hiked down there. I mean, beasts. Remember the 2 were fighting?
Yeah.
Dude, bringing it back, talk about wildlife. On our way back to that pipe, I'm running by, there's a guy coming towards me hiking, and I'm running by, and all I hear is and I look over, I'm like, yo, there's a snake there. And then you came by like 2 seconds later and you're like, yep, it's there.
Yeah.
And so I had to walk back and I had a little video. That was the first time I ever seen a rattlesnake in person.
Yeah, it's the first time I heard one or saw one.
Yeah, which is scary, but at the same time, like we were safe distance.
Safe distance. I definitely didn't want to go back there though. And then I think it's also funny to note that like, because I didn't know what kind of wildlife was in there. So like, I was asking you, like, you said mountain lions, and I kept saying the whole time we were out there, I was like, I just want to see one, but like really, really
like
far
all
away.
the way on the top of the cliff.
Yeah. But obviously we didn't see one. But yeah, so then from Phantom Ranch, now we're heading to South Kebab.
Right. And then we passed the sign, and we look, there's like a big or whatever you would call it, and it had like all Post-its on it, and one of the papers said Cottonwood Water Station closed.
Right.
So that's one thing we missed. So make sure if you see these signs, like go up to them, read them.
I would say, yeah, even if you're running it, like obviously we probably just ran by it, didn't notice. Even if you're running it, definitely stop at the signs if you didn't check in with water stations prior to, because that, I mean, it would have helped. But
it would have helped.
It is
we
what
would
it
have
is.
known, like, all right, let's drink here at Phantom Ranch, fill all the way up, and then.
Well, we felt a little better at that point, but if you want to kind of get into the climb.
Yeah, so, I mean, we go up, you climb up these stairs, and then you go through this sick tunnel. Well, you go over the bridge over the Colorado River again, and then you go through this tunnel where you're like in a cave for like 0.1 of a mile.
Yeah.
And then
we got to throw
out
up the video of that, but yeah.
Yeah. You pop out, and then there's just this sick climb of South Kabob where it's a switchback the whole time. It's like never ending, honestly. It felt like it. So we start going, dude, and like I was in front of you, and then you just passed me, and then you just took off. Like you were climbing up it, and I was looking up. I was like, dude, I can't get at that pace right now. And I'm climbing hard. I'm like pushing myself, and it looked like you were just like flowing up.
Yeah.
And like I knew, I even took out my GoPro. I was like, I'm going through it right now, but I'm still getting in. I'm looking, and I'm like absorbing these views. And I think at this point, we were seeing the best views of the day.
Yeah, definitely.
Like I would turn around, and you could see the path you just took.
Yeah.
And you could see that, and in the back, there's just more red rocks and just.
Then there was green on one side. Yeah.
Yeah, there was like green.
It was insane.
It's an insane
and then
hole
even that,
in
so
the
like,
earth.
I remember we went over the bridge. The bridge was sick. We went through the cave, and then like, you started to like, I wouldn't even say fall off, but now we were walking at the same pace rather than you being a little ahead of me. And I was like, this is the coolest part. And then obviously we hit like the biggest climb. And even the climb though, it was like, they had those wood planks that go across. And it's just like giant steps.
Yeah,
like you
it
need
wasn't
to step
like
big.
easy. Yeah, you had to like step weird at some points.
And there was also giant rocks, and like even climbing that, I wasn't really feeling like too much. I think the downhill was actually just light on my quads more, so going up wasn't as bad. But even that, I remember like, wow, this is really cool. And then I noticed how far ahead I was, and I was like, is it possible that my strides are that much longer? But then I'm like, no, there's no way, because this kid, like, this is what he does. Like I was like, he's probably not feeling too well. And then we hit that other part where it had a bunch of people. It kind of had like an area for shade.
It
like looked like where water would be.
Yeah, it did.
Yeah,
there's no water on this. Like it's known that there's no, and we knew that there's no water on South Kabob.
Until the top.
Right.
Until
like the very top.
So if you want to kind of get into, so now we're probably like what, not even halfway up, a quarter up.
Yeah. Like we weren't sure how long this climb was. I think we suspected 5 miles or something like that.
And I would say we were probably like 1.5.
8 miles?
Something. It was between like that 5 to 7 range, I think.
Yeah.
And everybody we were probably 2 miles in, 3 miles in. Everybody we kept asking was like, oh, like 4 miles.
Or they were giving us like, oh, it's like 5 hours. Like they were giving us like time, which you do because miles and hours, like 1 mile out there could take you almost an hour sometimes.
Right. And then depending who you are.
Which
is
shape.
Also
so like depending on who the person was, they're giving you feedback of how long it takes. It's like, I don't know that guy's shape, you know?
And then, the one guy said to you, what, like, I think he said, oh, it's like 2 miles, probably like what, like 10 hours?
Yeah, he's like 5 hours or something,
and you
like
were
5, 6 hours. We're like, definitely not that. But that's the point where like you turned to me and I looked at you, I was like, dude, I'm not doing well. Like, I'm going through it right now. And you're like, what is it? And I was just like, I don't know, I think I'm a little dehydrated. We just got to get to the top.
Yeah.
And at this point, it was overcast basically the whole day, but the sun started poking out a little, so it was definitely getting warmer too. And I felt like we were in like Jerusalem in Jesus time, bro. Some of these parts, we were like, it was like ancient, bro. Like I was like, where are we right now?
Yeah, no, it was wild. But
I'm dying.
I was gonna say, so what did like that feel? Because obviously you've kind of been there in races, unfortunately. Like, what was that feeling like? And like, did you know at that point that you were kind of like?
So going up, like when I felt the dehydration kicking in, I was like, still at the point where like hopefully we can get some water and I'm gonna be able to like drink and feel better. And I remember passing these 2 ladies and she was like, I was like, how you doing? She was like, great, how are you? And I'm like, thirsty.
Yeah.
She's like, you want some of my water? And I was like, nah, I'm good. And then like 5 minutes later I was like, I should have took that water.
Yeah.
And at that point it was too late. if I were to have any more water, I was going to throw up.
Yeah.
So then we got like more towards the top, and we thought we could see the top, but we were still miles away.
Yeah, the switch.
It was like the next top before we had to climb to the next top before like point. And I mean, every time you look to your left, you get amazing views. So that was keeping me alive, right? I would look to the left and I'd see just that opening and like hawks flying and just pure bliss and beauty. And then we got to those kids, remember, and we were like, how long up to the water? And they were like, dude, we don't even know if the water's on.
Well, the one guy said that, I don't know what kind of water is up there.
Yeah, whatever that meant.
So that was our initial like, oh shit moment, because we were like, what does that mean? And he was like, well, it just might not be like sanitary, like I don't know if I'd drink from it. And we were like, what the hell does that mean? And I was just also like, we just drank from a creek, so I don't really give a shit.
Yeah, I was drinking anything.
But that's when we started asking people, not only how far are we, but is there water up there? And that's when we started getting the no, which was just like...
People were just like, no.
Yeah.
And then people were being like, were awesome. They were giving out water. Those two kids, they gave us a lot of water. Yeah. But at that point, like I drank the water and then we took maybe like 20 more steps and that's when I vomited. That's when I just puked. Yeah. And I was holding it back, so you're like, don't let it go. And I was just like, dude, I can't.
And I think the conversation that we had like there was like crucial, and we've talked about it obviously after, but like, it obviously could be viewed as quitting. Clearly, it's not quitting. I mean, we did what at that point like 32 miles in the Grand Canyon. Like,
we just did a 50K,
right? Like that's insane.
With like 8,000 feet of climbing.
I think we even did that by like 8 hours 30 minutes. Like I think it literally took us like an hour and 30 minutes just to get up to the top.
That little end,
which was like 2 miles maybe. Like we were just like struggling.
I was crawling.
But I think it goes to like growth, and we've had this conversation, like I said, of like a younger version of us would have really got hurt out there or had to get helicoptered out. So the wherewithal to be like, hey, this just isn't the day we're going to do this because our health is more important than, you know, running the Grand Canyon, and we could just come back next year, was like such a pivotal moment. And like you even said it, you're like, my mom's going to be happy. And it's so true. Like I thought the same thing, and I was like, yeah. And like, you know, God forbid something did go wrong. What am I going to do? Carry you out of there for 2 miles? So yeah.
There was a lot of climbing left too.
Yeah. So I just, what were your like thoughts on that? Like obviously it sucked having to like almost come to terms with like, hey, when we get to the top of here, if there isn't water, we kind of have to stop.
Yeah, I think coming to that conclusion in my head, I was thinking that way before you notice anything. And when you noticed that I wasn't doing well, then I had to tell you.
Yeah.
And then I was still holding back from showing how bad I was at that point, which was only harming myself. But I was having that conversation in my head like, oh man, I think I'm gonna have to stop. Like it's like this upsetting feeling of you make it this far and like you gotta erase that because this one's not gonna count. You're gonna have to do it again. So it's coming to that conclusion, but then it's also like some growth in my mindset where it's like, well, look what you did. Like you committed to coming out here, you're here, you did it. Vin's crushing it. Like I think I now reflected on like, dude, I gave you such great advice that you fucking annihilated it.
Yeah.
And like you just took it and you're like, oh, I just got to eat, I got to drink, and I got my pack, I got this. Like you had all the gear and you just.
I went into that thing as naive as you could possibly go into the Grand Canyon, and I came out fine. So like that should show like that like just the mentorship through it was like even like blind faith. Yeah.
Yeah, it was amazing how like. That's another thing I was upset. I'm like, damn, bro, he's crushing it, and we're gonna have to stop.
Yeah.
And it's like my own damn fault for not eating and not drinking enough and just not listening to my own game plan, thinking I was superhuman at some points. Like, I got this, I could do this. My body's not gonna. And it's crazy because I know that that's wrong. You can't think like that, but that's how strong the ego can be. That's how strong my stubbornness can be. But yeah, there was that point, and I remember we were literally like 50 feet away from finishing, and it was a point where I like sat against the wall, and I remember just like dry heaving, like just like nothing in there, just my stomach pumping, nothing out.
Yeah.
And like I was like laying there, people were like, "Is he okay?" Like,
you're
like, "No, he just ran 50K in the Grand Canyon, not doing well, but we're okay."
Yeah. And
then we got to the top, dude, and then we saw the water was caged off. It was like locked out.
Yeah.
So it's like, it was meant to be that, you know, it started from when the route wasn't going to be the route I wanted, and to go there, to experience, to learn more about myself, more about yourself, to have that bonding experience. I think that's what that experience was about. That's what the universe wanted us to go through.
Yeah.
Was for me to go through the failure, for you to test your body and not have to push it too far. And I think just we could take a lot out of what we did. And then there's going back next year.
Yeah.
To complete the real rim to rim to rim. So which is always exciting because now I've tasted it. I know what to expect. There's always going to be the unexpected that happens, but I'm ready, way more ready than I was going into it this year.
And even that, like, obviously all the growth with it, the stuff that we've learned apart together, and like just like the mindset switch towards it. But I think now too, like, and we've spoken about like kind of doing it, like we could go back, do our own thing through it, but bring a community now and like invite others in, which is like the coolest thing. And I think from that point, even like we got back from there and we've like started a running group. We've like been going on so many runs with different people and like kind of making different connections. And like, you know, you do these things that, again, you don't fully need them, but they give you the confidence to like trickle into these other areas. And like, I mean, you've been saying it, like you're living life like 100 miles per hour, but you're present, and like it's just like a good flow state of life, like as a whole. It's not like you're in a single run in flow state, like, and I feel the same way. Like I was driving here today and I was just like, like my life's a vibe. Like people ask, how are you? And like everybody has like, oh yeah, I'm good. And like when I say I'm fucking wonderful. And like I actually mean that. Like, and it's every day isn't the happiest day, but it's also like being intentional with your moments. Like it's just so powerful.
Very powerful.
Yeah.
And even so, like I could go all day with what that topic is, but just pointing out the great moments of your day.
Yeah.
There's always gonna be the down moments of the day. For instance, like today, like when I went and drove and got coffee, like I hit every red light. And I was like, it was pissing me off. I was like, come on, I'm trying to get back.
Yeah.
But it was like, that pissed me off. But doing this right now and doing this podcast, like this is the joy of my day, and this is what I'm really gonna remember the day for.
Yeah.
And little conversations here. So like pointing out those joys of the day can also carry on that momentum that we're talking about right now. It's life's moving 100 miles per hour because we're on a momentum wave.
Sure.
And we're riding it, we're taking it, we're seizing the opportunity that we have right now in life, and we're seizing it. So it's like, there's no stopping us until we hit the wall. And when you hit the wall, you analyze the momentum you just had, and then you're in that stationary moment for a little bit, and then you'll get on another wave. So
it's true.
That's life, dude.
To kind of wrap that up, what would you say was your favorite part of either like a moment in it or just as a whole of the canyon? And if you want, I could go first.
You can go first.
So I think initially, like the awe of just like getting there, looking down and being like, wow, like we're in the Grand Canyon. The views are obviously insane. And then the initial like run down, you go through like that little cave, and as you're going down, if you look, like you see the whole canyon. And I took a video of it, and in the video you actually see like, it looks like I'm crazy close to the side, but I'm not. And like just like that, like I go to that moment, not from like the video on my phone, but like actually being there in my head, and it's like, holy shit, like we did the thing. Like of course we didn't do 47, we did 34, which is like insane, but it's just so, experience is cool.
Yeah, dude, that was a sick part.
Yeah.
I think my favorite was on our way back from Cottonwood, after we like drank and everything and got all that. I think I was like pumped that I saw the rattlesnake, and then we were playing music, I was like singing the songs, we were passing people, we were on our way back to Phantom Ranch, and I just remember like that was such a vibe within itself. Like just being in what was it called? The wall? The box.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, there's like a point in the canyon where you're in the box, and that's like the flat part before going to the North Rim. And just being in there, it was sick, dude. That was like definitely a vibe. I have a lot of videos from that part, so I think it's another thing that I've been able to live over and over again.
Yeah.
But overall, the whole experience was amazing, and even the rides, you know. And then we went to, afterwards, I was so dehydrated, I couldn't get anything down. I was like, stop at that Wendy's, I'm getting a ginger ale.
Yeah.
We were there, bro. Like, what was it? Why wouldn't they give it to us?
We were just in a long line, and they had somebody else's like food orders were getting messed up. So like they had the ginger ale sitting on the counter. You didn't pay yet, or they had an issue with the machine.
Yes, that's what it was.
You didn't get to pay, so they wouldn't give it to us. He's like, oh yeah, but he needs to pay for it first. I was like, we're not going anywhere.
You're like, listen, my guy just needs this drink. Like he's very dehydrated. He's gonna die.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. No,
we'll give you my phone to hold on to.
Literally. I actually did say that. I was like, here, just take my phone. And he's like, no, we can't do that. Like, we need to pay.
Dude,
and the machine worked out. You got the ginger ale. And then shortly after, you kind of felt like, okay.
Yeah. I think that's another thing we realized is that, like, we stopped just in time before, like, hospitalization was going to be the only.
Absolutely. Yeah, you were not even like a person. Like, it was like a little, honestly, like, I wasn't scared just because I know you know yourself. Like, you would have been like, hey, I really need to get somewhere if you needed, like, serious help like that. But I also know that you're willing to push through. So, like, I saw, like, hey, he's kind of, like, really hurting.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then we went to a diner. That was fun.
But great.
Something that was really cool was actually the next day you made me hike 7 miles.
Yeah.
I wanted to go to the gym. He wanted to hike 7 miles, so we hiked 7 miles.
Sedona.
But two things really stood out to me is the next day you get up and you went for a run. And, like, most people look at that as like, oh, that's just crazy. But it's like, no, like, that's just who you are as a person. And, like, it speaks to your character. And it's like, I don't even think you posted that run anywhere. Like, that's not for what this is about. Like, this is the thing you enjoy to do, and you felt good, and you, like, kind of, recovered from the day prior, and you went for a run. And, like, that's the stuff where it's like, I was forever like that weekend warrior. Like, I'll be in the gym 5 days a week, but the weekend comes now, I'm getting fucked up, and, like, I'll go back to the grind on Monday. And it's like, to be surrounded with these people, and now people say it to me is like, oh, you live this. And it's like, I could only do that through seeing other people do it, and it's cool. And then the second thing is, I was actually at a Yankee game with a friend before I even met you, and the girl actually said, like, oh, do you know Dan? And I was like, no, who's that? And she's like, oh, like, how long have you been going to the gym that I go to? And she's like, oh, he used to train here. And I was like, no. But she's like, oh, you guys would absolutely love each other. And I was like, wow, that's awesome. So we're coming back from the 7 mile hike that you made me do. And we were playing Forerunner, and we were screaming, singing, and because that's just what I do on my Snapchat. And I sent the snap to her, and she responded. She was like, I have to be honest, like, this is the most wholesome, like, coolest thing I've seen. And it was like, just the fact of, like, you really bring it back to, like, I didn't know you. She mentioned you at a Yankee game, and, like, we just ran the Grand Canyon together, like, and that was maybe, I don't know,
less than a year.
Yeah, maybe 7 months, 6 months from the Yankee game to not even knowing you to knowing you to the Grand Canyon. So, like, that was really, really cool, and, like, it was a great message from her, and it was, like, cool of her to send that. But yeah,
dude. And to your point of, like, me going out the next day for the run, one, you probably would have came out with me.
Yeah.
But it was your ankle and you had a meeting or something.
I was
so that was cool for me to see you, like, oh, I'm going on this call, even though we were, like, on vacation, right?
Right.
I was like, oh shit, he's, like, not skipping a beat. And yeah, I went out for a run at 7,000 feet altitude, just saying. And it's just, like, a thing that, like, that was yesterday. We're moving on. The game plan is still moving forward. That's why it's always great to have other things on your calendar, because it's like I can move on from that, focus on the next thing, and put that on the calendar later on. And, if I'm feeling good, like, why stop?
Yeah.
Ride that momentum, ride that wave.
It's true.
I'm only out in Arizona for a couple days. Like, there's not many times I can go out for a run that's not in the canyon.
Sure.
And then same thing with going on that hike. It's like, I've never been to Sedona. I've been wanting to see it. Like, even if we're sore, like, it's not that far of a hike. Meanwhile, it was pretty deep.
We were supposed to be like 3 miles, ended up being like 7, but
it
wasn't
deep.
bad.
Yeah. Beautiful, though.
Yeah.
Sedona's incredible.
And then if you kind of want to just get into, like, what you have next.
Yeah. That's the big thing. So next September 2nd in Maine, Pineland, Maine, I think it's called, there's the Last Man Standing Ultra. A Last Man Standing Ultra, or a backyard ultra, is everyone starts in the corral. At this race, there's over 100 people signed up, including Nick Bear, if people know him.
A couple other buddies we got.
Yeah, Kieran, Sully.
Yep.
Who else is in there?
Somebody else was supposed to be, right? Well, I was supposed to be, but I'm going to be a day out from
You
the
were
elite.
supposed to be. You're actually signed up, aren't you?
No, he gave me a refund. Because I
sweet.
told him, I was like, listen, I don't even need the money back, but if it could free up a spot, like, Nick Bear's going to be there. I know people probably want to be there. And Dan Marchese's going to be there. I don't know if people know that.
They're going to know.
They're going to know. Yeah.
So you start in this corral. Everyone starts there. You have 1 hour to run 4.2 miles in a trail. There's 100 feet of elevation per mile, so it's about 400 feet elevation per loop. And then depending on what time you get back, say I get back at minute 50, I have 10 minutes to run to my tent, change, eat, drink, do whatever I got to do. And I got to be back in that corral before the top of the next hour. Top of the next hour, you go, you do the loop again, and that continues on until you're the last one. So there's no finish line, but it can end at mile 60 if everyone quits before the last person, or it can end at mile 200 or 385 like Harvey Lewis did over the weekend.
Crazy. So what are you anticipating going into that?
You know, at first I said 120, and then you've seriously said 130. In my head, I'm like, it's a joke around. And now I'm literally believing I can run another 50K after 100. So I can see myself running 130 plus miles, and like with no stop in sight. Obviously, if things pop up, it is what it is. I got to make the same decisions I made out in Grand Canyon to pull the trigger so that I can have longevity in ultra world. But yeah, man, I'm a very competitive, I'm very stubborn, and these kind of races are perfect for me because I won't quit until that man quits. But I won't quit. You know, it's like, I'll wait till everyone else quits. I'll be the last guy there.
Yeah. And I think the coolest thing too, and like even obviously, you know, had John after the 100, had John after we did the Canyon, and I'm not, unfortunately, I mean, I would love to be there. I would love to be doing it, but I can't do it and I can't be there just because the way Italy is going to line up. But obviously, you're coming back on afterwards and we'll hear all about it. And I think the cool thing about that too is like, when you've helped me realize the importance of community, and like, of course, this is like the Keep Going podcast, and like, really, it's Nick's show, and I just kind of do some things, but yeah, it's like it's a community, and it's what we've built out, and like it's about experience, and like I love that I'm not going to be there, but like we will be able to sit down and have an intentional, no phone, like just direct, like actual time, and just kind of go over the race. Like that's what I'm looking forward to. Like obviously I want you to crush the race, but I'm like, wow, like hearing about it afterwards is gonna be sick.
Yeah, dude, I can't wait. And I'm dead serious when I say from the bottom of my core that I'm going to win this race. I mean it 100%.
Yeah.
I know like people will say things like that.
Yeah.
But I have experience. I've hit this distance, 100-mile distance multiple times, and I really, truly believe, and based off how training's been going right now, that I will dominate this race. And I'm like very excited to see how far I can push myself. And that's the cool thing about the race. We're all together until we're not. So I need someone else next to me, whether it's Nick Bear or someone else, to keep going. So if people are dying out around 110 or 112, I got to be like, dude, not yet. Like, don't quit. Let's keep going. So I'm empowering my opponent at the same time when it's just us two. If I hit a point where I'm like, I'm good, then I'm looking to no longer empower them and take home the gold.
You got to kind of manage your mind at that point. Yeah.
Another thing you're saying with community, I think our small group, like all together, we're a culture, man.
Yeah.
Like we all have, the difference between the community and the culture is that the culture is a mindset, and we all have that locked in mindset. We know like living in the moment, one day at a time, pushing each other. Like one of us is always doing one step ahead of each other, which is how you grow. You can't be the best in your crew, because then you'll always be the best and you're never going to have another level to go over. So we're always just empowering each other in different areas of life of how to take another step ahead, which is super important and very powerful, and why we're riding this wave.
Yeah, it's true. And two things stick out, like as you say that, and one would just be right off the bat, like we just had a conversation about, you know, like, and James Boris spoke about it, and then we talked about how Dr. Sean kind of had his own iteration of it, where like, if you run marathons and that's what you do, if you run ultras and that's what you do, like you going out to run isn't the hard thing for you to do. So it's like, that's the thing that's cool with our culture and community, is that like, it's not just in this running thing. Like we're talking about like relationships, and not just like, obviously like partners as far as like females, but also like family relationships. I had a conversation with Greg about like his brother, and like, I know we have conversations all the time about like our family and friends, and like how to handle situations, or like where we can kind of learn from each other, and then business and all of that as well. Like that's the coolest part, that it's not just like
fitness related.
We're David Goggins that grind until our feet bleed, and like we talk about like the things we did. And not say that David Goggins does that, but you know what I mean? Like it's not just the fitness and physical stuff. It's like life. Like it's just like mentorship through friendship. It's cool. And then the second thing is, and I've said this multiple times, but like pacing you for the 100. Like I wrote down, I'm gonna run 100 miles. I read it every morning. I wrote this down in like 2020. And when I wrote that down, I read Can't Hurt Me, David Goggins' first book. And I was like, I'm never gonna fucking do that, but like I should write this down, right? Like it feels like the thing to do. And like, bro, I read that every day now and I'm like, I even said it today on my run. I ran 6 miles today. I'm like, I'm running 100 fucking miles. Like,
94 more.
Yeah. But like it's seeing you do it, doing like these long runs with you and like just doing these events on my own as well. And it's like, just building the person that could do it. Like if I did it in 2020, yeah, I couldn't have done it. But like today, yeah, there's like no doubt I'm doing it. Like it's sick. And it's just so
no
cool.
doubt.
Yeah.
It's if you can eat and you can continue on, you have a very high advantage of finishing.
Yeah.
And I already know that you can eat
Definitely
and you can
eat,
move
yeah.
and you have stubbornnness and a strong mental game. So I'm very excited to see what happens on August 5th.
Yeah. So that's you got anything else for the canyon or anything?
That's it, man. That was the canyon.
Yeah, that was.
We'll be back.
Absolutely.
We'll definitely be back 2024.
Absolutely. And I think the next one we'll do, so your race is the second.
Second?
I mean, we could just, once you finish up, we'll recap both of our races and we'll kind of
because you have...
Well, then we don't have to tell the people what we got after that. We got tons of things planned, but I appreciate the time. Of course.
Man. Thanks for having me on.